Welcome to News on the Feed. Wi-Fi 6E is here. It opens up a world of possibilities, but also a new level of complexity. Managing a network for 3 frequency bands is easier said than done, unless you got a few tricks up your sleeve. Fortunately, our guest today, Christian Gilby, wrote a recent blog sharing some tips to help us maintain our sanity. Christian, let's start with the good. Why is everyone jumping on the Wi-Fi 6E train?
Yeah, so I think it's really about capacity. So what does 6E really introduce for the industry? It's expanding the RF spectrum, adding the 6 gigahertz frequency. Up until now, we're in the 2.4 and 5 gig. So there's, depending on the regulatory domain, like in the Americas, for example, it's 1200 megahertz additional. That's effectively a doubling of the available frequency, which translates into the Wi-Fi channels that you can actually run the traffic on. And that's big because we look at what's going on in terms of trends in the industry right now. We've got more and more mobile devices, IoT devices trying to connect to the network, more bandwidth hungry applications, especially in the past couple of years, as we've seen employees start to do a lot more hybrid work, getting more comfortable with video. You're seeing the demands on the bandwidth for wireless are really soaring. And ultimately, that's trickling out to the wired side as well, because if we boost the capacity on the Wi-Fi side, you've also got to boost the switching infrastructure to support that. So yeah, I mean, I think it's really exciting, just the increase of frequency or channels that's coming with 6E.
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't see what's not to like about that. But is there any downside?
I don't know if I'd say downside, but certainly some challenges. I mean, you look at, as I said, a doubling of frequency. It's about almost 60 additional 20 megahertz channels, almost 30, 40 megahertz channels. And you've got to set the channels for those. So if you look at a large network, what you're trying to do when you do a channel plan and design the network is try and minimize the interference. So you don't want 2 access points that are in hearing distance of each other to be on the same channel. Otherwise, the packets are going to collide and you're going to get drop packets. And effectively the bandwidth of the network is going to go down. So it's making the planning a lot harder. So if a customer is doing manual channel planning, i.e. setting the channels of each AP, it is really tough to do. And then I think the second one, as I alluded to before, is it's creating a challenge on the wired side. So a lot of these newer APs are driving more bandwidth. That means you've got to have faster uplinks, and then the power to support these devices as well, which comes in higher budgets for the PoE on the switches.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So is there a solution out there to help solve for that?
Yeah, so I think one of the exciting things that we're actually leveraging our technology for, which is Mist AI, is leveraging the AI and things like reinforcement learning to actually do this tuning and optimization of the channels. Because like I said, it's a lot more channels to play with. So the complexity has gone up. And you look at a network as it's running throughout the day, it's like a living, breathing organism. There's interference coming in, whether it's external to the office or maybe different devices that are connecting. The network has to adapt in real time. And that's where I think AI is going to be critical for organizations so that you can really optimize the channel, the power settings across your network.
Yeah, leveraging the technology is key. And so are there certain use cases that you see make more sense for immediate adoption of something like Wi-Fi 6E?
Yeah, so I think certainly areas where you've got a high density of devices, for example, meeting rooms, conference rooms in an enterprise, in education. So you've got a lecture hall, or a sports stadium on campus. Retail is another big one where you see certain areas of a retail environment will have a high density, like let's say the checkout lines, and you've got associates needing to connect to the network. So I think those are all great examples of areas where you're looking for more bandwidth to support either higher bandwidth applications or just more devices connecting to the network. And I think I've been through, I think about 5 generations of Wi-Fi changes now. One of the things that I would recommend as customers go and look at migrating to this is start to look at those high density areas or high performance areas. Let's say you've got a set of employees who are doing video editing, target those areas, upgrade the Wi-Fi infrastructure there first, and then ripple it across the network. allows you to manage the costs relative to the capacity requirements, and also gives you a bit of experience as you start to deploy this technology and get comfortable with it.
Christian, that's great advice. Thank you so much for sharing your tips on how companies can adopt Wi-Fi 6E without the headaches that all that complexity can bring. To learn more, we've included a link to Christian's blog, so you can check that out. And while you're on the feed, take some time to soak up some more industry news and knowledge. I dare you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.